But first, a Bath University student is in hospital tonight after a dramatic 9-hour cave rescue on the Mendips. Douglas Gould, who was 23, was brought out at 6 o'clock this morning after the biggest rescue operation ever mounted in the Mendip caves. He was badly hurt when he fell 40 feet inside Swildon's hole at Priddy near Wells. The caver has just undergone an operation in hospital. Ian Seymour reports.
This was the toughest and longest rescue ever undertaken by the Mendip Cave Rescue Organisation. 43 volunteers were involved for over 9 hours.
Well, this is Swildon's hole near Priddy. This is one of the most popular caves in the south of England. Yesterday evening, 2 cavers from the Bath University Cave Club went down 3,000 feet into the cave complex. But they suddenly came across an obstacle, a 40-foot drop, and then disaster struck.
That was when one caver was injured when he fell 40 feet at the black hole. And he had to hold his breath as he was dragged to safety through a water-filled cavern. Communications to the surface were possible thanks to a special rescue radio. Slowly but surely, the 23-year-old university student, Doug Gould, was passed along 32 different rescuers on a special stretcher towards the surface. At dawn, Doug Gould, in great pain, was brought to the surface where rescuers cheered their success. As he was carried to the waiting ambulance, he even managed to wave to the camera. So what had gone wrong? Well, to give you a rough idea where the black hole is, I'm standing on top of it now. It's 500 feet beneath my feet. And we're standing, what, just a few yards away from the parish church here at Priddy. Now, what happened was the cavers decided to descend a 40-foot drop by using a steel ladder like this. They hooked this over a boulder, but suddenly the boulder gave way, and Mr. Gould fell 40 feet to the floor.
He has been caving quite a number of years with the Bath University Caving Club. And certainly they did all the right things in the circumstances once things went wrong.
Do you think they were very lucky?
Oh, yes. I mean, imagine falling 40 feet. You can, I'm afraid, get much severer injuries than he got. Well, undoubtedly, the patient, given the fall and the circumstances and the general predicament he was in, did remarkably well. So I think full marks to him for doing what he did, particularly in coming through the underwater section and holding his breath whilst doing that with all those injuries.
The Mendip Rescue Organisation have saved 200 cavers since the war. They are all volunteers. Certainly Doug Gould will be eternally grateful to the rescue team and their special radio, which helped doctors stay in touch with the team 500 feet below. Also to the special stretcher, which protected his broken bones throughout the rescue. And the special hot air oxygen, which prevented him from suffering from hypothermia in the cold water. Tonight, Doug Gould is in Bath Royal United Hospital, having undergone surgery. His condition is said to be comfortable, a far cry from his condition in the infamous black hole last night.
And big problem.
From Bath is recovering in hospital after being trapped hundreds of feet underground in the Mendip Hills. Douglas Gould from Bath University fell from a ladder into a vertical pothole while caving with a companion at Swildon's hole near Priddy. In one of the biggest rescue operations ever seen in the Mendips, dozens of rescuers worked through the night to reach him. Gerald Haycock reports.
Douglas Gould and his fellow university student Kevin Martin entered the cave at 7:30 last night. Both were experienced potholers and knew the area well. This is a map of the cave complex seen from above as if the ground has been stripped away. The pair entered by the narrow gap on the eastern side and followed the much-used path along the course of the river. But at Priddy Pool they diverted to the north into the most inaccessible part of the complex, the Black Hole series of tunnels and passages. The two men had been underground for about an hour and had reached the furthest point of Swildon's hole. They were 3,000 feet from the entrance, about 500 feet underground. They were preparing to go down a vertical shaft called the Black Hole. They'd attached their ladders, begun to climb down, when suddenly a belay the ladder was tied to gave way. Mr. Gould fell 40 feet into the pitch darkness. Douglas Gould says the boulder to which he'd tied the ladder's retaining ropes simply snapped off. In the dark, Kevin Martin had no idea how seriously his companion was hurt. Douglas was conscious and able to talk, but both men were badly shocked. By chance, as Kevin made his way back to the surface on his own, he met another party in a main cave and they were able to raise the alarm as he went back to comfort his friend.
How difficult is this part of the cave?
Certainly it involves one particular passage which we call a sump, which it goes for 6 feet underwater, and therefore we had to bring the patient back through that, which was probably one of the most difficult parts. For the rest of the cave, quite a lot of crawling, quite a lot of climbing through narrow rifts and passages, and of course the cave does carry a stream throughout most of its length, and therefore you're with the water all the way.
Was it a major incident for you?
Yes, in terms of its length, certainly, and in terms of the numbers of people we've had to use and deploy underground, yes, I suppose one of the ones that will go down on the records as being quite an incident.
43 members of the rescue party were deployed underground, among them a local doctor and divers. On the surface, 7 others waited. Many more were on standby at home. Those in the caves were linked to the surface by a long waveband radio that can actually transmit through solid rock. Because of the intense cold, they had to use special machinery to pump hot air to the injured student. Then, with fears that he may have broken his pelvis, they had to transport him back to the surface on a stretcher, at one stage carrying him underwater through a 6-foot sump whilst he held his breath. 9 hours later, at 6 this morning, the party made it to the surface, to a round of applause from those who had waited all night. His behaviour throughout the ordeal had been, in the words of the rescue coordinator, very courageous. Douglas Gould was taken immediately to Bath's Royal United Hospital for treatment. It turned out his pelvis wasn't broken, but bruised, and he's broken a wrist in the fall. For much of the day, he's been unconscious under an anaesthetic, but tonight is said to be comfortable. Gerald Haycock, BBC West, in the Mendip Hills.